Every pupil in that school did dance. It was like a badge of honour to be part of the dance group. There's a lot of no's in my industry. There's a lot of no's. And you don't need to understand it to do it. And you don't need to understand it to receive it. You can make your own interpretation and it's not wrong.
Welcome to the Leeds Creative Folk podcast, where some of the most interesting and influential figures from the Leeds creative scene share what drives their creativity and what it means to be part of the Leeds Creative Village. My name's Paul Brodie from Manto Films, and my guest for this episode is Sharon Watson MBE, CEO and Principal of Northern School of Contemporary Dance, and one of the luminaries of the Leeds art scene. We talk about the vital importance of arts and culture in education, why the Leeds creative scene might be better connected than we think, and coming up with a dance routine by standing on a brick. As a child, were you creative?
On reflection, I think I was, although I hadn't realised it until I went back into some of my old school books and realised that I was busy sketching I think I was drawing dance costumes more than anything else, as opposed to a kind of design. But as a 9-year-old, I realised that I was also creative when I did my first dance class. And that was it. That was the inspiration. Yeah.
So tell me about that, your first dance class.
It actually was a revolution at the time because it's like a secondary school. My sister's 2 years older than I am, and she'd been to the school previously. And she came home and inspired by dance, and she said, "Oh, can you do this?" And she was like, "This is what we did in dance class today." And I'm like, this sounds really interesting. Couldn't wait. Well, 2.5 years later, there I was in the school having my first dance class and just going, this is transformative. This is incredible. And I went home after my first dance class, having Nadine Senior, she was the PE teacher at the time, talked to us about a career in dance at 9. And I went home to my mum and dad and I just said, I'm going to be a dancer when I'm 16. I'm going off to train. And of course, as parents do, they go, yeah, let's talk about it when you're older. You know, for the 4 years that I was in that middle school was just quite incredible. And 16 came and I had my bags packed. My parents were like, where are you going? I was like, yeah, I'm off to London. This is it.
That's amazing. So you knew right from when you kind of first started dancing, something clicked in you. And you're like, this is what I want to do. I love that whole story of Nadine Senior and the kind of the school and what she brought into that school. Are you able just to tell me a bit about that story?
I mean, Nadine, as I say, was a PE teacher, but the community that she was delivering her PE in realised that actually there's a creative community within Hales and Chapeltown. A lot of the kids, apparently the language wasn't English. The first language wasn't English. For us, for some of us it was. We were born here, so that was our mother tongue. But it was just really interesting that within the school, she found the inspiration to have that conversation with the headmaster, Jack Bramwell. And he just said, get on with it, which is quite unusual for a headmaster. And every pupil in that school did dance. And as I said to you earlier, it was like a badge of honour to be part of the dance group. We travelled all over, abroad, we travelled the world. At a young 9, 10, 11-year-old, we had the youth group a little earlier, and we did Scotland, we did Fife, we went to Birmingham, we were just all over the place. It was incredible. That's performing amazing. What dances that we made up, what we made ourselves and was supported.
What is it about dance? You know, there are lots of different forms of kind of art and creative expression. What is it about dance that is particularly kind of special for you or as a form of expression?
I mean, it's one of the things that Nadine would always say to us, you don't need to understand it to do it, and you don't need to understand it to receive it. You can make your own interpretation and it's not wrong. There's nothing that's wrong about it. And I think sometimes we can get really hung up on does that mean this? And it's like, no, it means what you want it to mean. And sometimes you can get the script that helps you to take you through a process and understand it. But I think the fact that you can put anything into that space and it's not wrong. And the different art forms can sit quite comfortably next to each other. You know, the contemporary, the classical, the jazz, the Afrofusion, all of these different forms. In fact, that is a real rich mix of language. And that's beautiful. I can speak many, many languages, and I actually only speak English at the moment. So I can do that through my artwork. And that's really special because I think to know that this is your tool, you're in complete control of it. And what you can offer with that, you can fine tune it to the point where you know that there's a real sense of satisfaction on both sides. So it does really speak to me very strongly.
I have a particular sort of issue at the moment with kind of how education works, and I have teenage kids, and for me, my big frustration is how, you know, in primary school there's so much sort of creativity and art and sort of creative expression just built into the curriculum, whereas you get to high school and so much of it is just sort of becoming an exam factory and sort of prep for exams, and that sort of the arts and creative expression has become, it feels to me anyway, very kind of peripheral. What are your kind of thoughts on that? And on sort of,
it's heartbreaking. Yeah, it really is heartbreaking. I think we encourage our kids from birth to play and to really be creative. We don't give them, you know, we don't test them as kids. We let them get on with it. And as we get older, it's just drained. And I think the schools, under so much pressure, just see that as an alternative as opposed to a mainstream. And that also is a real concern, because we are, as nature has it, we are creatives. And I think you can miss that opportunity to really inspire young people and to have that balance. I mean, it's all about balance at the end of the day, but our physical being is really intertwined with culture. You know, if you see it, you smell it, you taste it, you touch it, you know, all of these things. And yet, as we get older, you want to streamline that out of a human. And I just think it's the wrong direction to go in. So yeah, I do, it's concerning. And I work in higher education now, and I look at the young people that we work with, and the more we can inject into their creativity, the better. And I'm talking about in the broadest sense. So although dance is our vehicle, that's only one aspect of what we encourage our young people to engage with, because, you know, a better human being is a human that connects with culture and creativity. Yeah, if I could give the government a message, is that do not undo this work. Because you plant a seed now and it takes another 10, 15, 20 years for that tree to grow. You kind of need to keep watering what you have and to keep growing what you've already planted into the soil. But make sure the soil's good. Otherwise, you're not going to reap the benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, you know, on so many different levels, which you've kind of touched on there, you know, and it's not just about creating, you know, careers or, you know, people who are going to end up in the arts or in creative industries, and those are really important, really valuable to the economy, but it's about, you know, well-being and that sort of fully rounded education and the people that, you know, the young people that you're sort of creating from your schools, and when education becomes so narrow, they just miss out on so much, and as you say, it then just sits on the parents, and some kids will be privileged to have parents who sort of are aware of that and who give them opportunities outside of that. And then a lot of kids won't, and all they get is the input from school, and they're missing out on so much. We've touched on Nadine Senior and obviously just in her role in that school and what she set up, that was really important for you. But she was a real key figure through your development into kind of pursuing it further, going to London and so on. Just tell me about the sort of impact that she's had on you.
She's a formidable individual. I mean, she's no longer with us, God rest her soul. She's but she was, I called her my second mum. But she was there in the background for me pretty much whenever I needed her. But also I could just pick up the phone. I remember at my first year at the place, which is where I went to train to be a professional dancer in London, and I got an invitation to join quite a big famous show. And and I phoned her and I just said, Nadine, I've had this offer and it's a real opportunity. And she just said, Sharon, what did you go to London for? And I said, well, I'm here to train to be a professional dancer. And she said, have you done that yet? And I just said, no. She said, well, you know the answer. That was it.
That's so she was great.
Just clean and direct. Just set out your agenda and get on with it. But be the best that you can be, so you have no regrets, and you're not being rejected because you're not good at what you do. It's got to be some other reason. It's, you know, and I kind of understand that now when I talk to the students. Rejection is a very interesting concept around how you receive it and how you understand what you do with that, because there's a lot of no's in my industry. There's a lot of no's every time you kind of go out and you do a performance, and somebody might not like it, or even as you're rehearsing as a choreographer, you're making work and it's like, no, just do that again, change that, that's not quite right, that's not, and you're going, okay. So you have to build some resistance and understand what you do with that information. And I think Nadine was one that really helped me to understand what that meant and how I could utilize it to the best.
So yeah, it's amazing to have that figure that's really
Yeah.
kind of been the whole way through your journey as well. I don't know if you're able to sort of really pin this down, but what was it about dance that you really connected with from that young age?
I actually don't know if I have the answer to that, but what I know, I recall back then, was it made me feel good. It made me feel like I could do anything. And I didn't need to have words to make that happen. I could just express that through my physicality. And I think when it started to change in terms of the respect of what that could do for other people. So when I took my curtain call, I knew that I was pleasing more than myself. There's an audience out there that appreciated what I did. And it's funny because I've always wanted to run a company. And so I started my own and I carried on doing that work of offering over to other people. Then I was teaching throughout all of my time. Even as a 9-year-old, I was teaching dance to other people. And I think that ability to transfer and communicate in order to enable other people to be creative and to express themselves is just so satisfying. And I just think it's like eating, I mean, I do like food and I enjoy eating. It's like eating a 5-course meal. You know, you have all of these different flavors to take from and you can offer that over. So to facilitate for other people was it became part of my makeup. And ironically, for those that don't know, I am now sitting in the seat that Nadine Senior has. She was the founding principal of the school that I now run. And I just think you couldn't have written that script really, because, you know, it just wasn't written in my script. And although I had the desire and I had the passion and the determination to keep growing and to keep trying things and to experience different worlds at that, I never thought I'd get to the point where I'm actually running an international higher education, cultural creative school. I'm just like, wow, that is like, I pinch myself sometimes.
I mean, throughout your journey, it feels like you've done a lot of things. You were talking about there are so many no's, and there feels like there are so many stages through that where there have been huge barriers that just haven't stopped you. So even just the idea of going to London, just sort of, you know, age 16, disappearing off to London, you know, the thing of when you started at Phoenix Dance Theatre, I know you were one of the first women to join, and then, you know, going on to be director there, you know, what sort of driven you through those kind of barriers of just saying, well, no, I don't care about that, I'm going to keep going? What are the things that push you past those no's, would you say?
There's a couple of things, I think. One is just being told that you're good at something and thinking that I don't have to go and do what's considered a traditional job. I could be this person that traveled the world, which I did. I could be this person that made things that I made from my imagination, from my creativity. There was something about the fact that actually it was holistic. The no's were interesting because I sometimes felt that the no's were just systemic rather than there being a really good reason for a no. And having the confidence, I think that was the thing. And I think this is what I share a lot with individuals. Build your confidence, because you're no worse off if you just stay where you are. You're just kind of, it is what it is. But imagine if you were able to take that step forward because you had the confidence to ask the question, or you had the confidence to do something slightly different. And it's not failure, it's different. So really understanding what that means. I mean, I was rejected for the Phoenix job in the first time I went for it.
Okay.
Even though I was doing it. I was running the company, quote unquote, from the current the artistic director that was there. And then I went for the job and they didn't give it to me. I was like, something not right here. What's going on? But I think it was one of those, again, I don't think I had the confidence to tell them that basically the job that I'm going for, the vessel isn't broken, but the content is wrong. And now if you're interested in what I've got to offer, then I can fix the content and the vessel is strong. It's going to be there forever, quite frankly. It's such a strong vessel. And I I kind of wondered whether I was verging on the kind of the borders of arrogance in terms of just knowing that, because I knew the company so well. But it was the right thing to do, because I needed to put up or shut up and make a decision to move on or really get stuck in, which I had the opportunity to get stuck in, and I'm delighted I was able to do that.
That's amazing. Amazing story. I think that confidence thing among kind of creatives is often a sort of real fine balance of kind of, I think people who are naturally very creative will also have a real tendency to doubt themselves and
Always.
question themselves. And then also, I think, have the flip side of that, which is, no, actually, on some level, I do think I'm really good at this, you know, and an attention of which side of that kind of wins out and whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's an ongoing battle
Completely.
in the creative kind of mind.
I make work, and I sit and I think, you know, the critics are going to tear this apart, and you have to kind of build that resilience, because actually you've poured your soul and your heart into something. But the one that really sticks with me is the Windrush piece of work that I created, which was award-winning, and it became a film for BBC. And I look at that work, and the criticism that I had for it was quite daunting. But then I'm thinking, actually, people were joyous, because actually finally there was something that they could see and have an interpretation of a journey that is still relevant today, which is a sad thing, but it's a really important part to kind of put into the space in terms of this conversation.
I remember reading, I think you had some criticism that it was almost not kind of harrowing enough, or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah.
But actually that was something that felt really important to you.
This was the story of my family. So the fact that it wasn't brutal, I didn't show the beatings, I didn't show the brutality, but that was coming from someone who probably had no right to be saying that to me, in terms of your opinion is your opinion, and that isn't my narrative. That's not my world, and that's not my reality. This is my reality. My mother had to leave, was left in Jamaica with her children, and my father came here. And by the time we got through, and actually one of the things that was said to me as well is, why isn't this production just all black? And I went, my family's not all black. So why are you telling me to change my narrative? What is it that you're looking for that I'm not giving you? Because I can't give you that. And you can't really, you're in no position to tell me how I need to write my narrative. And actually, the reality is that you can challenge me on any of this, and it's all factual. So it was great, because I felt it was grounded in reality. And for me, that's really important, because I think every Windrusher has their journey, their own narrative. And I remember saying to the dancers that says that they don't have a connection to this story. And I says, you'll find it, because the moment you've displaced yourself, you put yourself in another position, you begin to feel different. People see you differently. So you need to find a narrative to help you feed into this story. It was quite an incredible story. And like I say, it's just sad that that story doesn't seem to be going away.
This is a question that I sort of ask myself quite a lot, but kind of whether arts and artists and have a responsibility to kind of respond to kind of the cultural and political challenges and social challenges of today, or whether, you know, it's just down to the individual, what they connect with. What are your feelings on that?
What is the job of art if entertainment is only one aspect of it? And if it's not to provoke the mind, if it's not to tell those stories, if it's not to really put the challenges into the space to really provoke those conversations, I think it's got a responsibility, and it's a lot bigger than sometimes we care to admit. But I do think that entertainment becomes one aspect of what it is. And even entertainment doesn't necessarily have a high point or a low point. It's just entertainment. You are entertained by watching something. And very often we can assume that entertainment is joy, but that's not necessarily the case. So it has a responsibility. And I think a lot of artists take on that element. But I think the vibrancy and the color range that we can put into art does enable others to engage and to challenge and to give you your own perspective, to give a perspective. But you can layer. It's just all about the layering, and you can find what's inspirational. And I watch a lot of art. I watch a lot of work. I go to the art galleries and see a lot of things that that is an I'm going to see whether or not that takes me anywhere.
My feeling is that if kind of artists and creatives are not responding to it, then you're leaving, like, then the only people who are really out there responding are kind of politicians, political commentators, you know, those kinds of figures, and particularly now the kind of much more divisive, kind of more extreme, they're the ones with the megaphones, they're the ones responding to it. So if as creatives, as artists, we kind of step back from that, then we're just leaving it all to them. And actually, that's such a sort of narrow reflection of
Yes.
the society and culture's response to what's going on, but it's what everyone hears and everyone sees. You were touching then about on sort of going to art galleries and so on, and something we talk a lot about within our work is trying to draw inspiration from outside of our own kind of discipline of kind of filmmaking, video. What are some of the other kind of areas that you look to for inspiration outside of dance?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, we've got a lot of spaces in Leeds that offer that inspiration, that creativity. And actually, even just on the borders of Leeds, you know, you get to the Hepworth, you get, you know, you take the walks around the locality, and you, I think it's Andy Goldsworth, is it Andy Goldsworth, which was an individual that worked with nature and just really beautiful art that you wouldn't necessarily find on your doorstep, but actually it's part of nature. So you could actually also create this work. So I'm inspired by the people that I work with. I'm also inspired by the students I work with. My environment gives me great opportunity to really absorb and digest a lot of this. But we do have to fill that space. We can't leave it void for the negative to grow. And once it's rooted, it's really difficult to unpluck. So we do need to keep working collectively. We need to keep on supporting what I believe is an industry, a creative industry that says the world can be better. And let's get on and do it.
I'm always really interested in people's creative process. You know, if you were asked to choreograph a piece, what like where do you start? Where do you start with that? And sort of what are the stages that you go through? There's not one
process that suits any delivery. There isn't. And I think if a choreographer said to you, I always do it like this, I would question that. Because sometimes you're inspired by the music and that will drive you. Sometimes you're inspired by a vision, a picture, a piece of artwork, or even just a conversation. So I am about to head into the studio to create something which is around buildings. And I'm thinking, okay, where do you start with that? And suddenly I thought, actually just stand on a brick. What does that, I mean, that is it. That's literally it. I saw someone, why don't you just start with standing on a brick? And inspiring buildings is what the kind of the brief is. I can do whatever I want. And it's just taken me to that space. So you can start with just something that is so far out that becomes quite literal. I don't have one method. I really find different inspirations. And I think that's what somebody said to me once in an interview. So how do we know it's your work? What are the distinctive, the kind of, how would we understand what your signature movements are? I said, I don't have any. So if I have them and I start to settle on them, then I think I've finished the job. So I would hope that you wouldn't necessarily know that it's my work because I've tried something new. And providing I'm happy with it, and it kind of really does take a journey. You never finish anything. That's a really bad thing with artists. You never really quite get to the end. But I do like the fact that actually I can be inspired by anything, by a conversation. And sometimes the brief is so tight that you don't really have a chance to sort of merge too far away from that. And therefore you go with that and it brings out other things. But I don't have one methodology that works.
What are some other kind of things that are going on in Leeds in terms of the arts and creative scene that really excite you, really inspire you?
I sit as part of a cultural consortium, which has 33 cultural organisations. And we get together and we try to fix the world, of course we do. But it's just really nice to sort of be that close to understanding what else is going on. And, you know, that's that's Opera North, that's Northern Ballet, that's Phoenix, that's RJC, there's SAR UK. We all sit in this room and we are literally talking about what matters to us in this city. How do we make change? How do we influence change? And there's never usually just one thing, because of course we're not all fighting for the same audiences. But we are building a culture that tells us that we can work together, but we can also influence our city.
One of the reasons for doing this podcast is I'm sort of interested in, we are, as a company, we're part of, what is referred to as the creative industries, though that's a slightly vague term, but that covers kind of, what we do, which is video and film, photography, design, advertising, marketing. And then there's this whole kind of creative and arts sector in Leeds, which is you guys, is theatre, is the opera, ballet, all those things. And it feels like these are two things that should be much more connected than they are in some ways. So it's sort of trying to think of how, like, almost how they can be better connected. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I think it's a myth to think that they're not connected.
Okay.
I do. I think we are a dance organisation primarily, but our students work with digital. So we put dance onto screens, onto film, onto photography. And so we do have this crossover. And I think we tend to feel that, yes, as you said, there's creative industries. I think it's an overarching title of what it is that we do, but we absolutely are working together. I don't think we would be having this conversation if there wasn't that symmetry around what engagement, what happens with our art and how does it feed. Digital, when you think about gaming, gaming uses physicality, it uses bodies, it uses all these things that enables you to really kind of get a good, I don't game myself, but I understand that there is a real need to understand the physicality of a movement that sits behind the lens. And, we encourage our students to get involved in all of that their career is a portfolio, and creative industries, whatever that is, kind of whether it is about technical, drawings, designs, that they can influence fashion, that they can influence designs, pictures, artwork. And there is more of a crossover. So yeah, maybe it's just the terminologies that we're using at the moment that's telling us that we're separate, but I don't believe we are.
Oh, that's great. That's a really positive take. So I love to hear that. What's your favourite kind of hidden gem in Leeds? So that could be a space, a coffee shop, a bar, a walk, anything. What's your favourite hidden gem in Leeds?
I guess that serves me well. There's two places, and that is Gledow Valley, which just is where I go to clear my mind. And I like House of Cocoa, which is just down the road. I go there, I leave work, and I just go and I'm like, yeah, I could just sit in that space. The food is great, and I can isolate myself, although it's so busy. So there's a real contrast there. But those are two places that I kind of go to quite regularly.
If you had to describe Leeds in 3 words, what would they be?
Oh, that's hard. 3 words. Okay. Opportunity. Subtle. What's the other one? I would say creative.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Perfect. Who is a Leeds creative that you think people should know about, maybe they don't know about?
Every student that's in my building. Every student that's in my building right now doing the work that's going to be out there in the next few years, and those that are ready to leave, they are amazing.
If Leeds was a flavour of ice cream, what would it be?
Well, it already is rum and raisin.
Okay, rum and raisin. Why is that?
Because I think we've got the spice as a city, and I just love that it's got texture and the flavours just melt. They work for me. But I do like the fact that actually, of course it's artificial rum, but it just gives you that little edge.
Nice. Brilliant. Thanks so much for doing that. Honestly, I really appreciate it. And as I said, I could carry on talking.
Thank you for making that so easy.